3, 2, 1. Uncle Ron stuff. Today is about defective ground fault circuit interrupter devices, and how you can test them and know when to replace them. I recently had a case where I visited my daughter, and an outlet on the back porch and an outlet on the front porch would not, they had no power there. And they went down and checked the breaker, and the breaker wasn't tripped, or was tripped, and they reset it, but they still had no power. And off the outlet on the rear of their house, it also fed a gazebo, so they had no lights or power in the gazebo. And on the front steps, it just simply was used for Christmas lights. Okay, so they had checked the breaker. They couldn't come up with anything, and so they asked me about it. And what I did was I went down and made sure that the breaker, they said, went to that, and unfortunately I'm the one who had done some work there, so I knew the breaker labeling was correct and the breaker was turned on. So I turned the breaker off, and I took the screws out of that outlet that was on the outside, and I pulled the receptacle out, and it was a ground fault circuit interrupter, and it had two push buttons. One was reset and one was test. And when I tried to, you cannot test or reset them when the power's off. So I pulled it out, and everything looked okay. There was no signs of burning. There was no signs of any sort of damage or mayhem had occurred in there. There were no burnt wires, anything like that. Okay. And I didn't see anything wrong with anything else in the box, so I went down and turned the breaker on. Now, I had a voltmeter with me. So I put my voltmeter across the input terminals, and there were two wires in the box, two sets of wires. One was an input from the breaker, and it did go directly to the breaker. The other wire fed the gazebo. So I knew which pair was which, and that would be the first thing if you're going to do this, you have to determine that which one is the hot coming in and the one that's going out. Now again, the hot could come in from some other outlet somewhere else, or who knows where. In this particular case, it was tied directly to the breaker. Okay, so when I put power, my voltmeter on the black and white terminals coming from the breaker, it was hot. It was 120 volts present to the outlet. All right. So holding the outlet very gently and carefully, I used a flat blade screwdriver to try to push in the reset. It would not go. I tried to push in the test. It would not go. If you cannot reset a GFCI breaker, when you have power at that outlet, you won't do it if you don't have power at the outlet. But if you're sure you have power at the outlet and you cannot reset it by flat blade push in, it's a bad device. The outlet is bad itself, the actual device that is wired in there. And that was the case on the back porch, and that was the case on the front porch. Now on the back porch, why did it fail? Well, they're both outside. They're both subject to water, but I saw no evidence of anything like that. But I was told that one member of the household had plugged in a hairdryer out there and had it running for maybe more than an hour. And a hairdryer doesn't pull a lot of current, but it pulls enough. And obviously, inside that little GFCI circuit, it got too hot and it blew something out. If they overheat, they're designed to fail. If it gets too hot, pulling too much current, and this was on a 20 amp circuit, but because of the extended period of time that circuit was, an hour and a half, it was running 10 amps, 5 amps, I don't know what it was, whatever it was. It overheated the internals of it, and it was bad. So that was, if you can't reset them, and you're getting power to them, they're bad. You have to replace that. And you need to replace it with the same amperage of the GFI circuit that you find in there presently. So when I looked at it, yes, the breaker was rated for 20 amps. The GFI that was defective was rated for 20 amps, and that's what I replaced it with. And I replaced it, screwed everything back together, flipped the breaker. I then had to reset the GFI to make it work, and it absolutely would. And I could test it, and it would pop, and I could reset it, and it would come back on. And this one had a little green light over there that tells you, yeah, I'm fine. Everything was okie-dokie on that one. I think that was a heat-related failure. Okay, front step GFI. That one did not have the same history. It had not been used to power heavy current load for hours and hours and hours. But when I looked at it, this house had vinyl siding, and in its recent past, within the last 10 years or so, it had been re-sided. And here's a case where the siding people had to take off what was there, including pulling out that circuit box, or at least exposing it so they could get the vinyl around it. And they don't know electrical. All they know is vinyl. They know how to cut vinyl and put it in there. But in this particular case, because it was vinyl and because the original electricians may or may not have located it, attached it to a 2x4 stud in the wall, sometimes the people who did the siding, they didn't use the regular electrical screws. They used heavy-duty long wood screws to try to find something to anchor the box to, because when they pulled it out and they disconnected so they could get their vinyl around it, they either didn't see it, or anyway, they used really long wood screws to try to anchor that outlet, and it's normal 2-flap metal cover back into that box. And it was obvious that it was not, half the screw was sticking out of one. So there was a real potential there for water penetration into that one. Same story as that one. I checked it. That outlet was tied directly to a breaker. I go down, flip the breaker. I pull the GFI outlet out of the box so I can seal the wiring. I don't see any trauma of any kind, no burnt wires, no heat-related damage indications, no stripped wires, no arcing, nothing. I didn't see anything. Go down, flip the breaker, bring my voltmeter, touch the hot wire, black and white wire. I have 120 volts present at the device. Okay. I hold it gently again. I use a flat blade screwdriver. I try to push in a reset. It will not reset. You hit the test, neither button does anything. Again, the device is defective. For whatever reason, water got into it, an overload, I don't know what. But it was bad. So, shut the breaker off, make sure there's no power at that device, remove it totally from the circuit, get a brand new equal, and this was a 20 amp, and I got a water resistant. I don't know exactly what that means, but they do have them that are called water resistant, at least, ground fault circuit interrupters now, and that's what I replaced it with. And I did manage to use the real screws to get it mounted in the box, as opposed to real long wood screws that the siding people had used. So once I got it in, I went down and flipped the breaker to on. I came back up. I pushed that reset button in. It immediately reset. You could hear it click. And I had power again, once again, at the actual outlets. I could hit the test button. It would pop it. You have no power. Hit a reset again. It would come back alive. Another case where the device was bad. There was no other devices in the way. The circuit was clean from the breaker right to the outlet, the cleanest possible way it can be. So nothing else could be in the way. And in that particular case, it's obviously the device. Now, there are plenty of cases where from the breaker, it goes through umpteen other devices before outlets, switches, whatever, boxes all over the house, before it may get to your GFI circuit. And there's a possibility that one of those things has failed in some sort of way. But if you cannot get the GFI to reset right at the outlet with the power turned on, it is most likely a defective GFI device. And you go, well, my experience, I lived in a house for 40 years with outlets, and I've never had a problem. It plugged in, worked every time. That's not the case anymore with a lot of things. It is not as solid because we have various protections built into it. I had a lady used to live across the street, and she could not understand the internet. Sometimes it was there, and sometimes it wasn't. She expected it to be like power. It's there 99.99999% of the time, unless there's a lightning storm or something, it might temporarily go out. But power, you expect it to be on all the time. You people expect their internet to be on all the time, never go out. She couldn't understand it. She was always calling, hey, what's going on? I need service call because I don't have any internet. No, they temporarily gone offline and it would come back in a while. That's enough. This was Uncle Ron's stuff. This had to do with replacement of GFI circuit interrupters. The devices can go bad. They do have a protection built in them. If the protection trips, it's a one-shot. Once it's faulted, it's faulted. It isn't going to recover. You have to replace it. That's enough for now. This was Uncle Ron's stuff. Today is the 16th of June, 2025, and I'm going to do a couple of these today because I don't feel like going outside again.